With that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move on to our final session, which is a fireside chat on building an entrepreneurial ecosystem. This conversation shall explore what it takes to build an ecosystem where entrepreneurship can thrive, not as an exception, but as momentum. It seeks to examine how institutions, policy, capital, and enabling infrastructure can come together to create the conditions for sustained innovation, sharper collaboration, long-term enterprise creation. I would now like to call on stage our guest, Mr. Aditya Shukla, Partner Bain & Company, Head of India Private Equity Practice, Ms. Shweta Rajpal Kohli, President and CEO, Startup Policy Forum, and our moderator for this session, Mr. Ashutosh Kumar, Deputy Editor-Chief and Chief of Delhi Bureau Fortune India. Now, this session is on building an entrepreneurial ecosystem.
This is the fag end of the evening, just before dinner and cocktails, but yet a very important discussion. In fact, in this hall, everybody who is present in this hall will in fact agree that building a company itself, developing an idea itself from scratch, it requires an ecosystem to develop around it. And similarly, to kind of make or give a conducive environment for these businesses to come up, that is also a kind of ecosystem in itself. And we have seen in the last 10 or 12 years how this has panned out in India. In fact, a lot of initiatives have been taken by the government, by the investor community, by the startups themselves to develop this whole ecosystem. But the question really is that where do we go next from here? So on that, I have with me Shweta, Rajpal, Kohli, and Aditya. Thanks a lot to both of you. Shweta, beginning from you, we have covered a long distance in the last 10 years. We have seen the government policy initiatives. We have seen the initiatives from the startups themselves, and we have seen how investor community how the entire community has actually come together. But what are the next frontiers when we talk in terms of this entrepreneurial journey and ecosystem for the next 10 years? What lies ahead for India, so to say?
Thank you, Ashutosh, for inviting us here. And I think the topic itself is very, very interesting because in the topic itself lies the answer, which is building that entrepreneurial ecosystem. And to answer your question, particularly on timing, I think there couldn't be better timing for us to talk about why we need an ecosystem. Because it has taken, say, 10 years of Startup India or the last 20 years of VC firms coming to India and building out this ecosystem for now the startup industry to reach a stage and phase where we're truly seeing that impact and meaning come out, right? Today you talk about several new age companies that are listed. We're talking about liquidity events finally coming for VC firms. So we're seeing a stage which I believe is an inflection point for the Indian startup ecosystem where now that ecosystem, that word ecosystem truly matters.
Right.
Because this is the time, Ashu, when say a founder who's just listed is able to take part in that conversation in the ecosystem and say, hey, I have learnings. Hey, I have lessons that I can give to you. Or there's a VC firm who can say, hey, you know what? I finally have liquidity to talk about. So I think when you reach a stage of maturity, that's when we say the true power of community and ecosystem comes through.
Right. Aditya, taking forward from what Shweta is saying as to how this entire community has come together and it has kind of got relevant experience in the last 10 to 15 years. Where do we go from here and how do we carry on this journey from here, so to say?
Ashutosh, thank you for having us here. As Shweta said, very topical, very relevant discussion. So I agree with every point she made, right? I think we have traversed a very interesting journey. A lot of that journey also stemmed from individual brilliance, right? Of founders who managed to kind of hustle and get the right support along. So that word ecosystem then becomes very important, right? And when I look at A, what founders want, B, what some of the global ecosystems have shown us as best practices, I think there are 4 or 5 things that you need to solve for, right? One, of course, is capital. The second is having top talent availability. Third is, can you create an environment a physical environment almost, right, to foster innovation and entrepreneurship? And can you create stories of relatable heroes and inspiring figures, right? Now, we've done some of this, right? Otherwise, we would not be where we are. I mean, look,
Exactly,
this year
yeah.
itself, I think last year there were around 16, 17 billion dollars of VC investments in India.
yeah.
You know the full story there, right? But I think there's a lot more to do on these.
Right.
If I was to just give my headlines, Ashutosh, I would say one, we need more capital. I think what the government's done with the Startup India Seed Fund, the second fund,
right.
is a great initiative. We need more patient capital
Right.
because a lot of the growth that happened in the last 10 years were consumer tech companies, which would have shown faster growth in some metric.
Right.
If you're going to focus on deep tech, AI, Gen AI native solutions, you need to have patient capital. So that's this one big thing. Second big thing I would say is you need to create an environment, right? And right now, if I take your question only for this individual city, the answer will be different. But if I take it for many other cities in India, like if I take a Coimbatore as an example, right? Or if I take even parts of NCR as an example, the answer will be different. How do you create an ecosystem environment there? Whether it's incubators, whether it is Y Combinator-like setups, a lot of what Shweta herself is doing, right? How do you create that? Those are two, capital plus this environment, which I think are very key levers for growth.
Right. So capital, the overall environment, seed capital, patient capital, Shweta. How can all these things come together, and what big leaps are we? Do you, expect in the next 10 years or 15 years for India to take in terms of more of deep tech startups, more of AI-led startups? Taking the story forward from mere consumer tech and consumer-oriented initiatives that we have seen in the last 10 years.
Asha, for any ecosystem to thrive, you need both breadth as well as depth. I
Right.
think Aditya mentioned some of that breadth, and then if I could just divide it into stakeholders who matter, right? Stakeholders, of course, founders, and then the founder ecosystem that builds around it. We hear of obviously communities where, oh, this is a founders community that all live together. You know, I was talking to a deep tech founder, last week in Bangalore. She is all of 20.
Okay.
But there are 3 deep tech founders, all 3 building in aerospace, who all 3 live together in one apartment.
Oh, wow.
And they came together because they were part of an emergent ventures cohort that funded them. So then imagine how that ecosystem play happens. There is a funding moment that happens. They come together, they're part of a cohort, they become friends. They're all building in aerospace, they're all very young, and now they're all living together, and that creates that culture. That creates, so there's a thriving, dynamic founder community, and that's an ecosystem. The second stakeholder, the VCs, the capital, right? And they're also going to go where the founders go. So wherever you see founders, you're going to see VCs, and that expands your circle in the ecosystem.
Right.
Then you're going to see, obviously, the infrastructure built around it. Which are the cities that enable that ecosystem to thrive? We know Bangalore, where we're sitting, is a fantastic example of that ecosystem. But we know as far as India is concerned, it's Delhi, it's Mumbai, some other pockets that are building. And then there are the other stakeholders we forget, the government and the media. I mean, you all sitting here are part of that. It's a multi-stakeholder effect at the end of the day. The fact that you're hosting this summit is part of that ecosystem effort. So I think it all builds up. It has a multiplier effect. It has a network effect. And it all starts somewhere, but it keeps building.
Right. What I'd also like to refer over here is that world is actually, this is something we'll all agree. World is actually moving at a very fast pace, very, very fast pace. We are kind of seeing the innovations that are happening in China or US. What are the learnings when we talk about our own domestic ecosystem? What are the learnings from what we see happening around the world? And, what can we learn, and how can we kind of emulate those learnings over here?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I would add to what Shweta just said, right? I think so one learning I feel is that your capital needs to be a little bit more patient. If you're building in aerospace, you're building in deep tech, you're doing something in space research, it will have a longer gestation period. Right? I think if you...
you cannot expect a consumer tech model to replay there.
You cannot expect the timelines or those same outcomes, right? And I think the examples you gave of China, if I look at many Bay Area startups, right? You will see that there will be parts of capital that are more consumer tech focused, which is great, but then there will be more patient capital. I think that's one. Secondly, I think Shweta alluded to this earlier on on exits, right? I think that is a very important part of the story, Ashutosh. If you have exits, if you create exits, right, and you have secondaries that are more structured, you have IPOs obviously that are happening, that will create liquidity for the founders. It will allow them to give back.
Right.
And then it also creates confidence in the ecosystem. I think the last 2-3 years are the first years where you've seen massive exits take place. And unless that happens, it's very hard for new capital, private capital, to come in and keep deploying more. So I think that's one thing that other countries have done very well. And then of course, as you mentioned, I think the media's role also in making sure that we foster that spirit of being an entrepreneur, right? I think it's become a lot better than what it was earlier, but there's still more to do. And these are areas where I feel some of the other global analogs have done quite well.
So in terms of global learnings, Shweta, along with the patient capital point, how does the policy set, you are very much into the policy aspect of it. How does the policy aspect play into it?
I think policy is a very, very important, I would say, game changer for the new age economy, because I think old economy played out as it is, but new economy is being scripted. It's being scripted by the players themselves, the founders, but on the other side, it is the government and the policymakers. And I would say, much as we're always talking about global learnings, how about for once giving a pat on the back to the Indian government? Because at least I do not know any head of state that has in so many ways put a startup ecosystem in a country on a pedestal like Prime Minister Modi has done, giving that status to Startup India. Always in every few months you hear him talking about the startup economy, about job creators and not job seekers, about promoting the startup ecosystem. So he truly can be credited as a champion of India's new economy and India's startup ecosystem, because he did see it coming 10 years ago, and he's been consistent at it. So I think this is one area where at least India has done well in positioning and championing startups.
Right. So as, I would like to sum this up with lines from a very famous poetry, miles to go before we sleep. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. I think that whole thing, that whole emotion actually plays out in our own startup ecosystem journey. So on that note, thank you, Shweta, and thanks a lot, Aditya, for being with us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that incredible session. I'd like to request Mr. Ashutosh to please present a token of appreciation to our panelists. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's all hear it up with a round of applause for that amazing session of building an entrepreneurial ecosystem.